see the dot of the 160 folks that committed suicide. I'm concerned with every single 160, okay? And I also can give you the numbers for Department of the Army civilians. My numbers are less secure there, but I know how many. I know how many family members have committed suicide. We are tracking as much as we possibly can to collect this data. But you can see, when you put this into perspective, we are really talking, as you move further and deeper into the maze, about a really small portion of the Army population. But it's something we have to be concerned about. Next slide, please. Now, this is just about it before I'll wrap it up and open it up for questions. But this is something that I really get a lot out of. It is what we call the composite life cycle model that the team put together in a way to try to explain the stress that goes on a soldier. And I don't know how many of you know about, there's a psychology called transitional psychology. Individuals who look at the stress that put on people's life when they have different transitions through their life. Each and every one of you has that occur. Those of us in the military have a higher incidence of stress than those outside the military, but those in government work, I'm sure, have a higher incidence of stress than people who are outside government work, or maybe they do or maybe they don't. But the attempt here is to try to capture this. Now, this is what we call the ARFAGEN line of operation up here, and you all know about that, and that's a normal soldier in our Army today who can go from unit to unit to unit. He may have stayed in the 101st the entire time, don't get caught up in that, but that individual for the last 10 years has been going on pre-deployment, deployment, redeployment, and then pre-deployment, deployment, redeployment. And you all know we've got soldiers in 10 years have deployed 4 and 5 times for 12 to 15-month rotations. There's some in this room right now. And that puts a level of stress on an individual that's greater than you're going to have for somebody who lives and is born in Lake City. What is it, Lake City, Missouri? Lake City, Missouri, goes to work for the Lake City ammo plant and stays there for 35 years and then retires there. Totally different experience. Then you add on that everyone who is a soldier goes through a soldier strand of stress events. You know, everybody's had a no pay due, everybody's got promoted, everybody's got in trouble, Article 15 or some kind of trouble. Not everybody. They've gone to school, Warriors Leaders Course the first time, you know, across the board, and you run into all these other stress points. And then for the most instance, all our soldiers, if they're not married, they have families, and families have stress events that occur. And you see those indicated down here, from marriage to a major purchase. I remember when I bought that first TV with $555 in my banking account, and I wrote the check for $400. That was a stress period for me. And you can see how these build up. Birth of a first child. Now you have the birth of the first child, and at the same time the deployment is going on. And you have these stress points. And these stress points are important to understand. And what we find is when we compare the amount of stress that a soldier goes through, we find that a soldier goes through in the first 6 years in the United States Army, in the Op Tempo and Purse Tempo, the last 10 years we've been in, the amount of stress that a normal individual growing up and working in Lake City, Missouri, okay, goes through in 80 years of life. And that creates some issues. And that's what this does for us. We know that 79% of our suicides are soldiers who have deployed one time or don't have any deployment history, which would indicate there's some resiliency that may grow, and we're hoping NIMH is going to help us understand that, quite frankly, with repeated deployments. And I have always felt, and I'm not saying that's we should have repeated deployments, believe me. I've always felt that the increase we've seen in suicides is because of the deployment experience. I think if you look at the front end of our suicides and realize that a majority of our suicides are individuals who are from 21 to 25 years old, they're white and they're male, except for one group, which is very, very interesting, that helps prove this model. And 60% of our suicides are for individuals who are on their first term of enlistment. Now, this is kind of interesting. I mean, everybody understands maturity will increase as you get older, hopefully, in most people. I know a couple that hasn't necessarily happened to. A lot of you probably think that way about your kids. But what Ron has been able to show us with comprehensive soldier fitness is the same phenomenon when it comes to resiliency. And what you find is the resiliency in the work she's done with the GAT, okay, we show that the resiliency of a youngster is far less than the resiliency of somebody who's 10 to 12 years in the United States Army. Many of them have learned those skills, and many of them haven't. But we see that increase, which has allowed her to go ahead and focus her efforts with brand new soldiers coming into the Army. I think one of the most amazing things is we've got comprehensive soldier fitness now down 10 hours of it in basic training. And that's the impact of what Rhonda's been able to do with comprehensive soldier fitness. Now, before I leave this chart, there's one other I'd like to point out, and the kind of thing that the report gets at that I think is so important. I said that average suicide in the United States Army is a soldier 21, 22 years old. That's, in fact, our second highest incidence of suicide. White, male, usually shoots himself. Women don't. I know all this horrid facts now. Women don't like to do anything to hurt their looks. So they find another way in those horrible cases. But as we unpack these numbers, we found that a soldier who enters the Army at 28 or 29 years of age, okay, is 3 times more likely to commit suicide than a soldier who's 21 years of age. And when you look at the model, I think you can start to understand that. Now, please, I'm not trying to typecast soldiers who enter the Army at 28 or 29 years of age. But I would make an argument that a lot of soldiers who make the decision to enter the Army at 28 or 29 years old are either very, very patriotic, and that could be the case, but a lot of them have had a rough time. They've either lost a job, have no health care, have 2 kids, a spouse who can't find work, or worse yet, 2 kids, no spouse, spouse is taken off. They are looking for a new start. And they enter the Army looking for it, and boom, we hit them with all these stressors. And the numbers are clear. 28 to 29-year-old private reports to your unit. You might want to take 5 or 10 more minutes talking to them and finding out about it. That's the value of this report. That's the value of this report, and that's what we get when we go through it, where the young lieutenant knows that when I have that come in without, drawing any conclusions, I want to find out where he lives, how he's doing, got money problems, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's why I'm so proud of what the report team did in putting this together. Next slide, please. Okay, just to show you that we just weren't doing history, I have decided to bulletize one that I just read 3 days ago. Okay, and I'll give you time to read it, but it continues. Got full support from General Thurman. He felt this for the longest period of time. As commander at FORSCOM, he's working many of these accountability issues so that we can start to get at them. This has been nobody's fault, and I often get asked, well, somebody's at fault for not holding soldiers accountable. I often talk about the recidivism rate we see in drug and alcohol issues, okay, and it's high. We've got one soldier in the United States Army that has had 15 HOTS in urinalysis and still is in the United States Army. That's kind of an amazing fact when you think about it. And he's working this. Now, that's not to say that our leaders let us down in some way. They had to prioritize what they had to do given the op-tempo that they were on. And when they prioritized those things, they realized their number 1 requirement is to have soldiers prepared to go into harm's way. And when Chiarelli did great on a deployment, comes back home and 6 weeks before the next deployment, all of a sudden gets stopped at a roadside spot check and blows .09, okay, gets turned in, there's a tendency to kind of look at Chiarelli and say, listen, Chiarelli did a great job, platoon sergeant, you take him, you stay with him for the next 6 weeks, you make god dang sure he doesn't get in any more trouble, we'll take him down range and everything will be okay. Then it's forgotten, leadership leaves, new leadership comes in, all of a sudden Chiarelli gets in a car accident and he blows 1.5, but there's no prior record of Chiarelli ever having any kind of alcohol problem. Okay, you might take a little stronger, command direct him over to ASAP, and you can fill in the rest. There are no communists here, but it's just time to kind of sit back and say, okay, what did we forget to do? And is there ways we can go back and take a look at that? Next slide, please. And I'm going to go ahead and cut it off because you all know about comprehensive soldier fitness, I hope. I am so excited about this program because I think that through the vision of the chief and the Sergeant Major and Rhonda Cornum and others, we have instituted a program that you don't have to listen to me. You can just talk to soldiers who are Master Resilience trainers. You can just talk to soldiers who are trained by Master Resilience trainers. And you can see how high on the program that they're on. They are really high about it. And I'm getting cards and letters from leaders all the time telling me about the value of this program. It is absolutely fantastic. And we've almost got 800,000 people who have been through the GAT. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is what it does. And next slide. And these are the 4 components of it. And if you haven't taken the GAT, I hope those of you who are wearing a uniform know you are required to take the GAT. And I hope you'll do it pretty soon so we get to 1.1 million people have taken the GAT. Okay, I'm going to stop there and open it up for any questions you might have. But this is a real winner of a program. Questions? Oh, come on. Well, I will return, I guess, 9 minutes of your day. Oh, we do have a question. Sir.
Sean Brown from Office of the Chief Legislative Liaison. I noticed in one of the slides there was a uptick in suicides during certain months. Do you see a correlation there? Or?
No. I entered this thing thinking that people were more likely to commit suicide in the springtime when love is in the air and at Christmas and the holidays, and that's not the case. What we have seen is, and I'll be able to tell after this year as I've been following this, what I have seen is the first couple of weeks in January. And I don't think it's got anything to do with the holidays as much as it does with transitions. Transitions are huge on individuals. Transitions are huge on individuals. And you see that. I mean, you know, if you can do nothing else, and I've told commanders now when I do the SRGs, our numbers show that, I mean, a soldier in his first year in the Army is more likely to commit suicide than at any other time. Deployment history or no deployment history. And the reason, I would argue, is that, you know, many come in with some problems, and we have no way of getting at those problems because of HIPAA, and in most cases we don't. They go through an experience like basic training where they got buddies around them, they get through a tough experience, they graduate from a tough experience, they got this great team and bond that they've built, they go through a graduation ceremony, okay, they go home, and then they report to the first unit, and all those buddies that they had before that got them through this experience, they're not there. So what I've tried to tell leaders, and it's pretty self-evident, that if you've got a sponsorship program that's flat on its back, that's not working, don't concentrate on the majors and lieutenant colonels and colonels, okay, and senior non-commissioned officers. Concentrate on the young soldiers reporting into your unit. Make sure they get a battle buddy, somebody who's with them, somebody who kind of helps them along and learn the ropes. That's the kind of thing that comes out of the report. And we see that. Another horrible time for suicides downrange is immediately after environmental leave. Okay? If you don't talk to a person before they go on environmental leave, and for sure talk to them when they get off the plane or the helicopter or whatever coming back off of environmental leave, to find out what they found out when they went home, you're making a huge mistake. I've taken the time to talk to folks who seek behavioral health through Military OneSource. You can get as many appointments as you want through Military OneSource. If you don't want to go see a doctor in the United States military and you're wearing a uniform, you can go up without a TRICARE referral on Military OneSource, and you can go see a psychologist at Georgetown if he takes TRICARE. Probably not, but maybe George Washington. And you know, no one's ever going to know, okay? And I've taken some time to talk to some of those folks around our big installations. Somebody gave me a tip one day. Said, you know, you ought to go talk to some of the folks who are seeing patients who come to them on Military OneSource. You know, I got a hold of this lady, and she just dumped on me. She just said, you won't believe it. I've got soldiers who come back on environmental leave and have 14 appointments with me. Every single day they're home on environmental leave, they're in my office. And her issue, I mean, you know, well, I won't go there because that's just an N of one. But when you talk to these folks, you find out we got some folks out there that they're hurting. And bad things happen and they need somebody to talk to. I think our chaplaincy has been absolutely amazing in the work that they've done and how they have kind of wrapped their arms around this problem. And if you go talk to them about it, they'll say, man, you know, we thought we came in here to minister the good book, but we're finding out that we're doing counseling sessions that, quite frankly, until we change the POI, which we've done at chaplaincy school, they weren't really prepared to handle. But they're getting that way now. So no, I've not seen anything when it comes to months, nothing. But I have when it comes to transition periods. Transition periods are, that's really tough. Anybody else? Barbara, don't ask me a money question. They'll be able to hear you. Just.
This isn't about money. This is Barbara Vanessa from Army Budget. Sir, you mentioned NIMH, but are there other academic or medical or any other kind of institutions that Army is partnering with to leverage this research?
Lots in research. All kinds in research, and that's why I like Chapter 10 so much. Hopefully we're going to get a little focus to it, kind of wrap our arms around it and see all the pieces that are out there. But the National Institute of Mental Health, we've entered into a $50 million study with NIMH for a 5-year period to look at this, and we're already starting to get back some of the results from NIMH, and they're becoming very revealing. I don't know, for those of you who are old like me, you know, the reason why when you go to the doctor, because of a report called the Framingham Report. Framingham is still going on. It started in 1948. They're still studying the patients they first brought into the program. It has dropped death by cardiovascular, sudden death in this country by over 65%. And it's the reason why you get a cholesterol test. It's the reason why they say, have you ever had a heart attack or any kind of heart problems in your family? They collect that. It's the reason why I take aspirin. It used to be at 81 milligram. Now it's 329. As you get older, they give you bigger ones. Every single day, you know. I mean, all those things that happen, and they can basically come up with a pretty good idea whether or not you are a high-risk individual for having some kind of heart problem based on pulling together all that stuff. That came out of Framingham. That's what NIMH is trying to do. They're trying to come up with an algorithm that says, uh-oh, you're going to go commit suicide. No, that's not it. They're just going to help you through some kind of biomarkers or anything else. For those of you who are going to take a physical lately, I mean, the worst part isn't when the doctor walks into the room. It's the worst part is when he walks in to tell you what your blood results are, because I swear to God, 90% of what could go wrong is going to be told, oh, boy, we don't like that level. And you go, you know, I mean, what they can tell on blood now is just absolutely amazing. Well, that's where we need to get to with these kind of issues. I mean, if we had biomarkers that could help us with PTS and TBI, if there was some kind of blood test we could tell to say you've got TBI or PTS, but I will promise you, the problem we have between PTS and TBI, and when you run into a soldier who says, I have been treated by the United States Army and I've gone to the doctor 275 times and nobody will help me, it's a misdiagnosis, I bet you, in just about every case. Because what they call the comorbidity, doctors call it, between the symptoms between PTS and TBI is huge. And sometimes, and these are my words, not doctors, it's an educated guess on their part, whether it's TBI or PTS. They give you the drugs, but if they've misdiagnosed it, if they give you drugs for PTS and it's TBI, they're the total different drugs than they would if it was for TBI, which creates this problem. Every single one of these cases I look into, I get their medical records and I find that the least number of times I've ever seen a soldier seen by a doctor is 150. But these are huge and difficult issues to try to figure out, and I go back to this science of the brain. It is not as mature as it is if we've been able to do with mechanical injuries. I mean, you know, we know how to fix people who've lost legs and arms and have them run in the DC Triathlon this week. You know darn well there's going to be some kids out there because of the amazing stuff our doctors have done. But these are difficult. Okay, I am bound and determined to give you back 45 seconds of your day. So thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.